Hello, good afternoon. My name is Anthony Wright Day Hernandez. I'm the Community Collections Archivist here at Virginia Tech University Libraries, and this is Archival Adventures. Today we have episode 4, where we will be looking at the Black History Pamphlet collection from our Special Collections and University Archives. I should have captions on, and you all should be able to hear me. Please let me know in chat if captions aren't working, or if you can't hear me, or if the music is too loud. All of that is adjustable. But I want to welcome you all here, and thank you all for coming. This should be a good one today. I do want to start out just by making a couple of acknowledgments here. We acknowledge the Tutelo and Monacan people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live, and recognize their continuing connection to the land, water, and air that Virginia Tech consumes. We pay respect to the Tutelo and Monacan nations and to their elders past, present, and emerging. We also acknowledge that Virginia Tech's Blacksburg campus was previously the site of the Smithfield Plantation. At any point from 1774 to 1865, the Preston family enslaved 40 to 100 African men, women, and children on this land. We pay respect to those souls and acknowledge that Virginia Tech is undeniably tied to this legacy. We also acknowledge that Virginia Tech's Blacksburg campus was previously the site of the Solitude Estate, which enslaved at least 30 African men, women, and children on this land. We acknowledge the contributions of the fractions and other enslaved persons in the creation and emergence of Virginia Tech as a major land-grant university, and in accordance with the university's efforts to transform an historic location into a site for the interpretation of the African American experience on campus and the region. Right, so February 3rd, 2021, and we're going to start today looking at the Black History Pamphlet collection. And to begin, I'm going to actually pull up the screen share so that you all can see the finding aid for the collection. So that should be on the screen now. I'm going to go ahead and try and zoom that in. So hopefully you'll be able to read the text with me as I scroll through this. I'm going to make one little adjustment here. Possibly. I want to get the query out so that it doesn't highlight specific words, and it'll be easier to actually read that way. There we go. Right, so the Black History Pamphlet collection, the description that we have, it was processed by Hannah Bocane, who was a student in Special Collections and University Archives, as well as Kira Dietz, who is one of our archivists and our department's assistant director. We originally acquired this, we processed it in 2012, according to the collection number. It was acquired sometime prior to 2007, that's all I know. Processing and arrangement happened in 2012, so the description that we have was completed in 2014. There is a short description here of what's in the collection. So that's the scope and content area. This collection consists of pamphlets relating to a variety of specific topics in Black history, as well as pamphlets relating to both Black history and Africa, the West Indies, communism, and Asia. Materials date from the 1920s through the 1970s, and the contents list below includes a bibliography of pamphlet and publication titles at the folder level. So I have pulled the first 6 boxes of this collection. I've not previously dug through it too much. I've gone through and pulled specific items to use in exhibits in the past, but for the most part, I'm not conversant with everything in this collection. It is possible that we would come across materials that some people might find objectionable. So just a warning there that as we're going through, these are historic documents and they reveal the views and thoughts of their creators at the time they were created. But let's look here at what we've got. So there are 6 series in this collection. Topics in Black history, and that has pamphlets relating to civil rights and civil rights organizations, arts and culture, discrimination, legal issues, drugs, and education, as well as publications. The second series is Africa, and it contains pamphlets primarily relating to issues in different countries and regions. Series 3 is West Indies, which is pamphlets about islands and countries. Series 4 is Communism, containing publications primarily about communism in the United States, with some from other areas. Series 5 is Asia, including a small number of publications divided into 2 subseries, China and Vietnam. And then Series 6 is Other Topics, with materials about dating and marriage, financial issues, and the loss of rights of indigenous groups. I have only pulled the first 6 boxes, so likely the latter series I don't have any material for in the room. But you all are welcome to go and look at this finding aid yourselves. I will throw a link here in chat. One second. And there's a reason I'm throwing the link in, which is basically you can look through the finding aid, and if there's something specific listed in the 6 boxes that I have here that you want me to pull out and show, let me know in chat, and I will find that folder and pull it out so we can look at it. I'm typing from one computer to the other, so I can't just copy from screen to screen. LPV 01292.xml. So that link should take you to the finding aid that we have been looking at together. And like I said, if you want to look at that, and if you scroll down to where the list of items is, here under the contents list, there's going to be a short description describing what's in each folder. If there's something in the first 6 boxes, so you see here it says box 1 or box folder 1-1, that's box 1 folder 1, and in that is ACLU. Box 1 folder 2 is Afro-American Studies, and then within that there's Leslie Waffen, Nancy Nolan, the 56th annual meeting of the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History from 1970. So anything down through when it gets into box 6, I should have here on the cart. And if there's something specific that you'd like me to pull out and have us look at, please do let me know and I will do so. Otherwise, I'm going to pull a folder at random and we will take a look. Switch over. I'm going to switch to the document focus view. And I'm going to start with box 1. So we'll start with this folder that is just called Black Power. So I'm going to open it up and I'll set it over here on the cart and pull out items one at a time and we can look at them together. So this all came to us as a collection of material. It already had, like you see this label up here that says Black Power. Somebody had organized this before we got it into kind of topical areas. And so that label was not added by us. That was there when we got it. There is a stamp on here, stamping at Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University Special Collections, Carroll M. Newman Library. I am not certain when that stamp was in use or who put it on there. Typically, that would not be something that we would do today because that is a permanent change to the material, and that's not something that we would want to do in preserving it. In the finding aid, it says that we acquired it sometime before 2007. Generally, that means that it's from some collections that were located in a room, and at one point in time, somebody went back and was going through that room, organizing it, trying to find out what all was in there, and discovered a bunch of collections that had not been described and were just there, and nobody really knew they were there as far as like what they were. And so they ended up with things like, hey, we don't know when we got this, but we have it, and we move forward from there. So we don't know specifically how or when we got this collection. And I imagine the stamp was probably on there from before that happened, so I can't even tell you who did it or when. So we have a pamphlet here, Dialectics of Black Power by Robert L. Allen, a Guardian pamphlet for 35 cents. And Archivist Kira, if you happen to be in chat and watching, you can feel free to correct me if I state anything wrong about old collections that we discovered in a room, because that was well before my time. Cover photo is by Julius Lester. Let's see what we have here. So this is copyright 1968 by Weekly Guardian Associates. And it has a preface that I will read out for you. Black power means many things to many people. In fact, the range of its meanings often appears restricted only by the innovative limitations of those who call themselves advocates of black power. To most thoughtful observers, however, it has become increasingly clear that black power is more than a mere slogan, but less than a consistent ideology. The first section of this pamphlet is an attempt to shape this growing awareness into an analysis of the more generally accepted meanings of black power and place them within a radical perspective. The second section examines in detail an effort by an establishment institution, the Ford Foundation, to co-opt black power and convert the Congress of Racial Equality into an instrument for control of the black community. Taken together, the two sections cut away the emotionalism surrounding black power and instead present a critical assessment of its political content. So in the contents you can see part 1 is the politics of black power, and part 2, the Ford Foundation and black power. So just going to keep looking through this, and just as a reminder, if there is something that you would like to request, you can visit the finding aid, and I will pull out any folders. I have boxes 1 through 6 of this collection. So feel free to look at the finding aid and let me know if there's anything in particular in those first 6 boxes you'd like me to pull out and look at on camera with you. If you don't know where the finding aid is, our finding aids are located at virginiaheritage.org. That's vaheritage.org. And this is the Black History Pamphlet collection. I can also drop the link in chat again if anybody who wasn't here when I did last time needs the link. So again, this is a 1968 pamphlet, kind of talking the politics of black power. So I'm going to read a little bit of the introduction where they are kind of describing what black power is. And again, this was 1968. The Southern-based nonviolent civil rights movement. Oh, I see Alice has dropped the links directly to this finding aid. So anything in the first 6 boxes I can pull out and we can look at on camera. The Southern-based nonviolent civil rights movement is dead. It died a victim of the intransigent U.S. racism, which sparked the first fiery urban rebellions in northern black ghettos. From the ashes of these early revolts came the angry cry of Black Power. Now, that same racism, as solidly entrenched as ever, and the growing intensity and breadth of urban convulsions may be sounding the death knell of the Black Power movement as it has been known up until now. Repression, co-optation, and deepening alienation of the urban masses has posed a crisis that has splintered the Black Power movement and presented an obstacle which much of the present leadership appears unable to surmount. Among some of these leaders and spokesmen, there is increasing fear that the man is about to apply the final solution to the ghettos. Others more soberly conclude that only militant black leaders and organizations are to be the targets. They expect to be jailed or assassinated, and their groups disbanded or co-opted as neo-colonial rulers of the troublesome natives who populate urban black colonies. A few genuine radicals, the feeling is, perhaps even the fragments of an organization will survive to carry on the liberation struggle. So it gives a good sense of kind of the anger that was involved in the Black Power movement. I mean, there's a lot of history to this movement, and anger rightly so. And even to this day, this sounds very familiar to a lot of conversations that I hear going on today, because things really haven't changed all that much. They haven't gotten a lot better. Dilemma. For the frustrated and rebellious ghetto youth, Black Power was at once a ray of hope and the final angry cry to be uttered when the torch was set to a white store. Stokely Carmichael, then chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, wrote in the spring of 1967 that the Black Power movement could speak to the growing militancy of young black people in the urban ghetto. The difficulty is that in the ghetto, hope and despair chase each other at breakneck speed in a vicious cycle, creating an impulse to action which quickly turns to nihilism. This poses a grave dilemma for the radical organizer, a dilemma which has now trapped Carmichael. So, conflict between hope and fear, cultural nationalism. They've got a picture of Stokely Carmichael. So, essentially, this is a pamphlet detailing the Black Power movement for anybody that would want to learn about it. And while it was intended for an audience in the late 1960s, it is equally as useful to us today in understanding what the Black Power movement was and what their goals were, what their feelings were, why they were involved in that movement. So as a historical document, it is a very useful piece. On the back is a little bit about the person who authored this. Robert L. Allen, a staff writer for The Guardian since January 1967, has long been active in the American radical movement, especially in draft resistance and in the Black liberation struggle. He studied mathematics at Morehouse College in Atlanta and took an M.A. in sociology from the New School for Social Research in New York City. With his wife, he will soon open a Guardian branch office in San Francisco. So 1968, it was a 35-cent pamphlet about Black Power. I'm going to continue with the Black Power folder here. This is Black Power item number 2, as it was labeled, by James E. Jackson, introduction by Henry Winston, The Meaning of Black Power, 15 cents. I don't know a date on this yet. The back cover lists additional pamphlets that are for sale, more on Negro history and struggles. Again, I will note that these are historic documents and the language used may not be the language that we would use today. New Colonialism, U.S. Style by Henry Winston. The African Revolution by N. Numade. For a Radical Change, The Communist View by Gus Hall. Negro Freedom by Gus Hall. Labor Key Force by Gus Hall. Which Way Israel by Hyman Loomer. As well as some books. A View from Here, Essays on Peace and Freedom by J.E. Jackson. Neocolonialism by Kwame Nkrumah. The World and Africa by W.E.B. Du Bois. Mission to Hanoi by Herbert Aptheker. Vietnam North, a new book by Wilfred G. Burchett. New Program of the Communist Party, draft. And Toward Negro Freedom by Herbert Aptheker. So this is reprinted from Political Affairs, September 1966. The Meaning of Black Power by James E. Jackson. New Outlook Publishers, 1966. So I'll read a little bit of the introduction, and then we can move on to another item. The real substance of the slogan Black Power corresponds to the innermost desires of the Negro people and all democratic white masses to put an end to Jim Crowism, segregation and discrimination, and for the achievement of full equality for the Negro people in the United States. The fight to put an end to second-class citizenship for the Negro people is at this moment the very heart of the struggle for democracy for all the people of the United States. It is necessary to see the relationship of the struggle for Negro rights to the total fight against reaction and fascism, which expresses itself on the one hand in the criminal war of aggression against the people of Vietnam and on the other in the spread of racist ideas and racist practices against the Negro people. In this pamphlet, James E. Jackson, publisher of The Worker, exposes the conscious and deliberate distortions of the slogan Black Power by those whose aim is to conceal this simple truth. This outstanding communist makes a significant contribution to this discussion in which an entire people seeks to find a meaningful and effective path of struggle to bring about economic, political, and social equality. It goes on with additional information about James E. Jackson. A lot of the items in the pamphlets do reference communist thought and communist political teachings. There is an entire section that refers to communism, which shouldn't be all that surprising. The community movement that was the civil rights movement in the 1960s was inevitably linked with communist ideas because it was really a movement for the betterment of people by people banding together and working together, which ties in very closely with the actual political philosophy of communism. So the fact that these are about black civil rights and also reference communism shouldn't be all that surprising. Let's see what else we've got here. So we have a pamphlet here called Chicago and Black Power. And here it's 30 cents. We've got a map of Chicago. I'll zoom in a little bit on the map because the map is an interesting detail here. And I'm just going to try and not zoom too fast, which I have done in the past. So the caption here in the lower right, the key, says Chicago's Black Areas. April 1950 is the part that is fully shaded. Expansion, April 1950 to April 1960, is the part that is shaded in but with dots. So It might be a little hard to see on camera, but it's roughly this area here and then this area here, as well as a little bit over here by University. And then expansion April 1960 to December 1967 is the part that is the black with the white lines across it. And so this pamphlet, let's see what all they talk about here. The description down here says, this article originally appeared in Le Monde in February 1968, translated by Denise Bourdet and John Heckman. So it's from a French magazine, and has been translated to English. The contents are birth of a ghetto or a nation, thinking black, and Detroit or redemptive violence. So let's see. A birth of a ghetto or a nation. When I was assigned to this parish 5 years ago, it had barely 40,000 people. Only middle-income whites, mostly Catholics of Polish origin. Today, more than 60,000 people live in the same area, all black. Very few, of course, are Catholics, since the church has few roots in black society. We refuse to act as missionaries, but we are staying here. We are trying to make ourselves acceptable to the community through civic action and by serving as counselors for local organizations. But we refuse to direct, no matter what. The community wouldn't accept it anyway. The man who lost the whole of his white parish in less than 5 years and found himself drowned in a new society which he had not studied. In a land of missions, say certain priests more prone to proselytize, is a young white priest in Chicago. His parish is situated in the west part of the city. His odd position is an exception only because he refused to follow the whites. In fact, a white panic is the rule for all the neighborhoods located on the borders of the city's two principal ghettos, the west side, 300,000 inhabitants, and the south side, 600,000 inhabitants. In Chicago, as in most northern and eastern industrial cities in the country, de facto segregation, the concentration of a city's black population into one or two well-defined neighborhoods, is in no way lessening. To the contrary, it is expanding rapidly. Picture here is labeled Chicago, April 7th, 1968, National Guard on the defensive. So there's a lot of stuff in here where it's talking about housing and the segregation of the city into black versus white areas. Looks like this was put out by New England Free Press. I could spend the entire time reading this, but I'm going to pull out another one unless people would like me to read more from it. Feel free to pop into chat and let me know if there's anything in particular that you want me to look at closer. But I do want to look at as many of these things as I can today. This one. I also want to move on from the Black Power folder eventually because there's a lot of other really good stuff in this collection. So this is Black Power number 6, Stokely Carmichael, Toward Black Liberation. Reprinted at the Glad Day Press by volunteer labor. One of the most pointed illustrations of the need for black power as a positive and redemptive force in a society degenerating into a form of totalitarianism is to be made by examining the history of distortion that the concept has received in national media and publicity. In this debate, as in everything else that affects our lives, Negroes are dependent on and at the discretion of forces and institutions within the white society that have little interest in representing us honestly. Our experience with the national press has been that where they have managed to escape a meretricious special interest in Get Whitney sensationalism and race war mongering, individual reporters and commentators have been conditioned by the enveloping racism of the society to the point where they are incapable even of objective observation and reporting of racial incidents, much less the analysis of ideas. But this limitation of vision and perceptions is an inevitable consequence of the dictatorship of definition, interpretation, and consciousness, along with the censorship of history that the society has inflicted upon the Negro and itself. Our concern for Black power addresses itself directly to this problem, the necessity to reclaim our history and our identity from the cultural terrorism and depredation of self-justifying white guilt. To do this, we shall have to struggle for the right to create our own terms through which to define ourselves and our relationship to the society, and to have these terms recognized. This is the first necessity of a free people, and the first right that any oppressor must suspend. The white fathers of American racism knew this, instinctively it seems, as is indicated by the continuous record of the distortion and omission in their dealings with the red and black men, in the same way that Southern apologists for the Jim Crow Society have so obscured, muddied, and misinterpreted the record of the Reconstruction period until it is almost impossible to tell what really happened. Their contemporary counterparts are busy doing the same thing with the recent history of the Civil Rights Movement. And this is reprinted from the Massachusetts Review, autumn 1966, copyright 1966, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. So it is a treatise written by Stokely Carmichael, one of the more well-known names of the Black Power movement and the Civil Rights movement itself. We do at Virginia Tech have a Black Studies program, African American Studies program. I'm not sure which terminology they actually use. And so these are materials that would be of interest to students studying in those programs, especially when they get to units on civil rights. I'm going to take a sip of water real quick. So here we actually have a newspaper of some sort. It's going to be slightly too big for the camera. But I will show. It is a large picture. Actually fully unfold it here. So this is Angela Davis, of course. The language of this item appears to be German. Freiheit für Angela Davis. I'm gonna fold it up so I can get the German language on here. Diese Wandzeitung ist herausgegeben vom Angela Davis Solidaritätskomitee, and then it gives an address. So something about an Angela Davis Solidarity Committee. And then the back is a full-on, looks like 7 articles, 7 sections writing about Angela Davis and ostensibly, I assume in support of her. I don't read German, so I can't really go into a whole lot of detail with that. I do have another item in here related to Angela Davis. Oh, but it's from the same place, and it's also in German. Let's see if I can come up with what it says using Google Translate. I'm guessing this is going to be freedom for Angela Davis. Yes, so freedom for Angela Davis, solidarity, something. Oh, I have an extra N, and it apparently can't translate it with that. Solidarity event with Fania Davis, the sister of Angela Davis. I believe that's what that says. Yes, the sister of Angela Davis. Whew, that is a lengthy word at the top here. Let me try this one. Bürger Recht Skampferen Professor. Gerre CHTSKM. Civil rights professor, Angela Davis. So yeah, it's going to give information about Angela Davis and why they want her to be freed, because of course she was arrested for her civil rights activism. But interesting that we have materials in German for a German audience about that. I'm going to close this folder and move on to another one. Of course, I can bring that one back if anybody really wants me to. Let's see what we have in box 2. Looks like we have a communism folder, a courts folder, discrimination. Lots of folders on discrimination. So how about we pull out the courts folder, see what's in there, see if we find anything interesting. Again, I want to thank everybody who's joining us today. We are sharing materials from the Black History Pamphlets collection at Special Collections and University Archives, Newman Library, Virginia Tech. If you want to identify anything specifically that is in this collection that you'd like me to pull out and look at, you're free to look at the finding aid. Try and do. There's a link to the finding aid there. I have the first 6 boxes with me here today, so if there's anything in those first 6 boxes that you would like for me to pull out and share, just throw it in chat and let me know. Otherwise, I appreciate everybody who's hanging out and watching. Okay. So I'm gonna start with this one here, a pamphlet about the Scottsboro boys. So the Scottsboro boys, 4 freed, 5 to go, by Angelo Herndon. This was published By Workers Library Publishers Incorporated, P.O. Box 148, STAD, New York City, August 1937. So hopefully it'll give a little background on the Scottsboro Boys. If it doesn't, then I will look up a short summary. I'm familiar with the story because there was a Broadway musical, and I watched Broadway. The Scottsboro Boys, 4 Freed, 5 to Go by Angelo Herndon. Eugene Williams, Roy Wright, Willie Robertson, and Olin Montgomery are free. Let this victory and great cause for jubilation hasten on the struggle for the freedom of the other 5 boys. 6 years of unyielding struggle of the Negro people, of their supporters, and of friends of democracy and justice the world over, in the USA, London, Moscow, Berlin, Cuba, Mexico, and Spain, have wrenched from the hands of Alabama's feudal despots 4 more intended victims of the rope and faggot. And again, these are historic documents. They use terminology that we would not use today. The term that I read at the end of that sentence there was not being used in the derogatory sense that we know it today. It was being used in a different context in this document from 1937. As well as the language in here that is used to refer to Black people. These are historic documents and they do use different terminology. I am sharing them with you in their form as they are and reading them out to you. I would not encourage the use of that language today, but these are historic documents and I am trying to share them as they are. If people are uncomfortable with that, I can censor them as I read them. You'll still be able to see the words on the screen if your resolution is high enough. But I do think that as important, as historic documents, it is important to encounter what they were at the time. And these are actually supportive of the Black community. Yeah, so just wanted to say that. Congratulations, Internal Labor Defense, the Communist Party, and the Young Communist League. Congratulations to the organizations of the United Scottsboro Defense Committee, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the League for Industrial Democracy, the Church League for Industrial Democracy, Episcopal, the ILD, the Methodist Federation for Social Service, and the American Civil Liberties Union. You have scored a smash hit victory for Negro rights and the preservation of civil liberties. Let's see if it's... I want to see if it gives a description of the Scottsboro Boys story. It does. And it's a fairly short pamphlet. I might just read the whole thing. So, we of the Young Communist League are proud that we have played a leading role in this noble cause for justice and democracy. In expressing our greetings to the Scottsboro Boys and their defenders, we pledge our continued efforts in mobilizing every possible force in the fight for the freedom of the other 5. We shall be ever vigilant in bringing to the consciousness of all youth the shameful crime of Scottsboro. We will leave no stone unturned in the fight for the liberation of the Negro people from the rule of Southern landlord oppression. Alabama's attempt to perpetuate the slave system by framing 9 Negroes met with universal opposition from those who have been outraged by this crude type of injustice. The liberty-loving people of the world chorused in repeated determination, "The Scottsboro Boys shall not die." The hundreds and thousands of mass meetings, demonstrations, and other dramatic actions struck a ringing blow at Alabama's system of human bondage. The compelling force generated through the organized might of millions wrung from their blood-stained hands this glorious but partial victory. On July 25, 1937, after 6 long years of endless and tireless work for the freedom of the Scottsboro Boys, the news which flashed around the world that 4 of the boys had been freed came as a thunderbolt of joy and happiness to the hearts of millions. In Harlem, New York, In Harlem, New York, many Negro mothers who had untiringly followed the Scottsboro case from its beginning wept for sheer joy. Kerchiefs in hand, they dabbed away almost incessantly at the tears that flowed freely until their warm hearts tired from the excitement. In their happiness, they expressed their kindred feeling of brotherhood with all the members of their race who are degraded and crushed by the iron heel of Southern barbarism. They wanted to share with these mothers the joy which now came after 6 years of grief and sorrow. One Negro mother, in a sonorous voice, intoned, "Great God, Scottsboro boys are free! I knew the lynchers would never touch a hair in their heads. Oh, ye Scottsboro, shame of the lynchers' rule. We will never forget you, you who torture and burn black men. But we've cheated you. 4 lives you'll never get. Oh, Scottsboro, now we're wise. 5 more lives will never satisfy your ravenous thirst for black men's blood." Like this Negro mother, white trade unionists, liberals, clergymen, writers, and all progressive people who believe that all men are created equal have understood that the fight to save the lives of the 9 boys is a fight of progressive humanity against the barbarities of an age-worn slave system. The corrupt politicians and other shady characters have fought so stubbornly to send the boys to their death because they too have recognized that Scottsboro is a challenge to their vile system of political and economic servitude. For 6 years, through falsehoods, intrigue, bribery, and intimidation, the state of Alabama has insisted upon the supreme penalty of death for the boys. At the second trial of Haywood Patterson, the late Attorney General, Knight, after working himself up in a lather, in a thundering voice of hatred and contempt for the Negro people, demanded of the jury, "Send that black thing, Haywood Patterson, A.H., to his death. Alabama justice cannot be bought with Jew money from New York." Releasing 4 to murder 5. Of all the inconsistencies, one might be prompted to ask, why have the authorities of Alabama for 6 years held all 9 of the boys guilty of the crime of rape, and now, as if by some stroke of magic, they suddenly decided that 5 of them are innocent? The answer is that they have known from the very beginning that all of the boys are innocent. In the case of Ozzie Powell, Alabama has laid itself wide open for castigation. Ozzie Powell was exonerated from all charges of rape and sentenced to 20 years for scratching Sheriff Sandlin's throat. The truth of the matter is that Ozzie Powell, in almost insane desperation, after more than 5 years of prison confinement, was provoked to defend himself from the taunts, jibes, and physical maulings received from the hands of Sheriff Sandlin. Half of his brain was shot away. His whole body is practically paralyzed from the bullet that almost proved fatal to him. For this, Powell has been sentenced to 20 years. But like a thief, when caught in the act of committing some terrible crime, the authorities of Alabama have tried to wriggle out of a situation in which they have received scathing admonitions from the working class and prominent liberals. Yes, the whole world knows that the Scottsboro boys are not guilty. Nobody will be fooled by the insidious move of releasing 4 in order to murder the other 5. Victoria Price lied defiantly for 6 years. She swore by the Bible and everything else, as only a disreputable character like her would do, that all 9 of the boys raped her in succession. According to her story, at the first and other trials that followed, she was thrown on top of sharp, jagged rock in the open gondola car in which they were riding, and the 9 Negroes ravaged her one after the other. Clearly, the state of Alabama now admits that she was giving false testimony. Dr. D.R. Bridges, who examined her, testified that there was no evidence of scratches or cuts on her back, nor of such injuries as would be expected after such an experience. It seems rather interesting in view of the fact that she claimed to have fought back vigorously in trying to keep the Negroes off, that there were no bruises or scratches on her back, a remarkable back she has. The examination of Victoria Price by Dr. Bridges on the day of the alleged rape indicated that she had not had intercourse for at least 24 hours. Dr. Bridges also testified that she was calm and showed no signs of excitement, such as would be inevitable after mass rape. I'll probably stop it there. There are a few more pages to go, but basically the Scottsboro Boys case, a pamphlet here announcing that 4 of the Scottsboro Boys had been released, and basically making a case for why the other 5 should also be released. Again, this was published in 1937, and it's since been laminated and is stapled together as a laminated document, but it's an interesting piece in the collection here. There are a number of other items in here about the Scottsboro Boys case. Let's see what else we have. I'm not looking for Scottsboro Boys in particular. I'm just looking to see what else is in this court folder here. See if maybe there's some more on Angela Davis. We have the story of the Trenton Six. A couple of items about the Trenton Six. I'm not familiar with this case, so we'll look at it together. I am going to take another sip of water, though, because I've been speaking a lot. The Story of the Trenton Six by Elwood Dean. Try and move over so I'm better in the shot here. This was a 5-cent pamphlet. In 1949, we have an about the author. Elwood M. Dean is the educational director of the Communist Party of New Jersey. He has participated in the progressive movement in his home state of New Jersey for many years and was a leader in the Young Communist League. Mr. Dean was the first sergeant in the Army during World War II and served in the South Pacific. He conducts a column in the New Jersey edition of The Worker. From its beginning, he has been associated with the development of the mass campaign to free the Trenton Six. Saturday night is traditionally a night for fun and recreation. In New Jersey's capital city of Trenton, there isn't very much that most Negro youth can do on Saturday night unless it bears the mark of Jim Crow's whiplash. The taverns on Willow Street were in full swing, and Carver Center, Trenton's Negro YMCA, was open as usual, but Collis English, 23, Negro, World War II Navy veteran, and victim of malaria, wasn't in any of these places on the Saturday night of February 7, 1948. He was in a Jim Crow place, however. Try and zoom in a little bit here so you can actually see the document that I'm reading from. He was pacing a hard cement floor. He walked to and from the cold steel bars that separated him from his family and another kind of Jim Crow called freedom. He had been in jail since the night before, and since that night he had wondered why he was there. When the big white fist that was supposed to represent law and order in Trenton knocked heavily on the door of his home at 247 Church Street on Friday, Collis was seated at a table with McKinley Forrest and James Mackenzie. They were listening to the radio. A big voice disturbed the calmness in the English home. The voice came from behind a brass-buttoned uniform and asked for Collis, saying something about an automobile. The policeman took Collis, English, away. He hasn't been home since. Some may see this as the real beginning of the case of the Trenton Six. Some may see it as a murder case. That was the charge. But behind that charge lies a world of Jim Crow and segregation. Behind the charge lies a conspiracy of a white supremacist state apparatus aimed at terrorizing the Negro people, in New Jersey as well as in the South. The case of the Trenton Six was created in plans laid out by the police of Trenton. the prosecutor of Mercer County, and the state of New Jersey to murder 6 innocent Negroes in the electric chair. These 6 Negro lives were to have been burned out during the week beginning September 19, 1948. After their conviction, the 6 were moved to the death house to wait for that week, and neither police nor prosecutor ever bothered to tell them that their sentence had been appealed by their defense lawyers. That 19th of September was a Sunday. There is no evidence as to whether the policemen and the prosecutor concerned went to church that day. The prosecution considers this a murder case. The prosecution calls it the Horner case and is ostensibly concerned with solving the murder of William Horner, a 73-year-old second-hand furniture dealer. On the morning of January 27, 1948, Horner was found in his shop surrounded by the almost valueless junk which was his stock. His head was crushed in and neatly folded into a roll in his pocket was $1,560. His common-law wife, Elizabeth McGuire, was beaten into unconsciousness at the same time in their little store at 213 North Broad Street, Trenton. The killing of William Horner climaxed a series of crimes in New Jersey's capital city. The police were under severe attack because the number of unsolved crimes was mounting. Director of Public Safety Andrew J. Dutch felt the need of self-vindication. He spoke with vehemence. Trenton is in the middle of its biggest crime wave in years. After what happened to Horner, no one is safe in this city. We're forming a special motorized bandit squad to patrol the city, and they will shoot to kill. Well-meaning people may accuse us of acting like a Gestapo, but if we can bring in the Horner killers or save one life, I'm willing to take all their criticisms. Dutch proved that no one is safe in this city. He gave life to the anticipated accusations of acting like a Gestapo. An 11 p.m. curfew was established and punctuated by a reign of terror in the Negro ghetto. Literally no Negro was safe. The bandit squad, armed with Tommy guns, swooped down and rounded up Negro men at random. Residents of the community relate story upon story of how their sons, brothers, husbands, and nephews were accosted by police, intimidated, taken into custody, beaten, and later released without charges being placed against them. These actions were nothing new to the Negro people of Trenton. I want to see if it actually gives any information on who the 6 are and what they were charged or convicted of. Here's, it looks like section 2 does. In the trial of the Trenton 6, the prosecution presented 5 signed statements as confessions. Some of the confessions was badly needed by the prosecution. Some kind of confessions was badly needed by the prosecution, for though the police had the alleged murder weapon, the defendant's fingerprints were not on it. When Mrs. Mitchell asked her brother why he had admitted guilt, English said, "If anyone beat you like they did me and the others, you'd have done the same thing." In court, he testified that he had been beaten by the police. Forrest testified that he was given narcotics in cigarettes and water. His counsel told the court that Forrest was in a drugged condition when visited in jail. The attorney described his client's vomiting and incoherent language, as well as an inability to recognize his own brother, Robert Forrest, soon after the confession had been signed. James Thorpe had undergone the amputation of his right arm just 10 days before the Horner tragedy. He was still under treatment when arrested. Police, he testified, threatened to inflict further pain by striking his arm stump. Thorpe signed a statement. The climax of the testimony on the confessions came with the witness stand remarks of Police Captain Andrew F. Delate, commander of Trenton's 1st Police Precinct. His statement was a striking combination of arrogance and self-incrimination. "I knew the truth, and I insisted on Collis English making a confession in line with the truth as I conceived it to be." These confessions were Prosecutor Volp's only evidence against the men. Overwhelming testimony clearly established the whereabouts of all 6 men at 11 a.m. on the morning of Tuesday, January 27, 1948. Mackenzie presented a work slip for that day. Lee Guynard and Alfonso Strauss both testified that they were working with Mackenzie at 11 a.m. McKinley Forrest was sent out that morning by his employer, Isaac Katzeff, of the Liberty Meat Market to make a bank deposit. He was gone only 20 minutes. He was walking and stopped to talk with a friend. It takes more than 10 minutes to drive one way from Forrest's place of employment to Horner's Broad Street store. Philip Vinar, one of Forrest's co-workers, says of him, "You could trust Forrest with your life. He'd never do anything like this. He was an honest, nice, quiet boy, a steady worker. If he wanted to rob someone, as the police say, he'd had a chance to do it right here." So, essentially, six people who were framed, it looks like in the late 1940s. The other pamphlet here on the Trenton Six, I'll read the introduction to it. "This is an alarming story. If it had happened in Scottsboro, Alabama, or in Groveland, Florida, or in South Carolina, Georgia, or anywhere else in the Klan-ridden territory of the South, it would have been branded outrageous and denounced as another blot on democracy's record, and another triumph for hate in a section of our country where such grim triumphs are all too frequent. But it didn't happen in Alabama. It happened in the enlightened North, in Trenton, New Jersey, in the capital of the great liberal state whose constitution, with its forthright and unequivocal protection of human and civil rights, has been hailed as one of the most enlightened pieces of modern legislation in existence anywhere. For this reason, the story is not just outrageous, not just deplorable. It is unbelievable and appalling even to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which has handled many a fearful case. It is a story which should arouse every single freedom-loving American out of his 'it can't happen here' apathy. It did happen here." So this is actually a pamphlet from the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. This was published in January 1951. And it appears to be much more concise than the other one. I'll zoom back out a little bit. The Trenton Six story. The central characters in the story are 6 young Trenton Negroes: Horace Wilson, John Mackenzie, Collis English, Ralph Cooper, McKinley Forrest, and James Thorpe, on trial for their lives a second time in one of the most confusing and complicated murder cases of our time. This is how the story began. On the morning of January 27, 1948, 73-year-old William Horner was beaten to death with a soda pop bottle in the back room of his combination junk novelty shop and home. Mrs. Elizabeth Horner, his wife, knocked unconscious in the front room of the shop, managed to crawl to the front door to call for help. Frank Eldracher, a cigar salesman walking from across the street to his car, which was parked in front of the Horner store, saw Mrs. Horner and ran to call the police. He later testified that when he was less than 10 feet from the door to the store, and before he noticed Mrs. Horner, he saw 2 Negroes, both rather light-complexioned, come out of the store. Mrs. Virginia Barclay, who lives across the street, said she saw 3 Negro teenagers run from the direction of the store and jump into a 4-door green 1936 Plymouth sedan in which a 4th youth was sitting. Apparently, the 2 eyewitness stories furnished the premise that 6 Negroes were involved in the crime. Police began their manhunt, combing the poorer sections of town and the Negro districts of Trenton nearby communities. 3 days after the murder, the Trenton Times announced that the streets would be patrolled by a heavily armed motorized bandit squad, and that all men found on the streets without good reason would be questioned by plainclothesmen. On February 6, 10 days after the murder, Collis English, 23, a veteran with malaria and a rheumatic heart, was arrested for driving his father's 2-door black 1938 Ford sedan without a license. Police questioned him about the Horner murder, grilling him continuously for 19 hours until he signed a confession. When McKinley Forrest, 35, English's brother-in-law, came to police headquarters the next day to find out why English had failed to return home, he too was arrested. So were 4 others named by English in his confession: John Mackenzie, 24, James Thorpe, 24, Ralph Cooper, 23, and Horace Wilson, 37. All 6 were kept incommunicado for 4 days and 5 nights, denied sleep, subjected to relentless interrogation, and threatened with violence if they did not confess. 5 of the 6 signed confessions. Here were the facts when the Trenton Six went on trial for their lives on June 15. The 2 eyewitnesses had described the young men they saw leaving the scene of the crime as light-complexioned. 5 of the 6 defendants have dark skin. Thorpe, the only one light in color, had had his arm amputated 8 days before the murder. No witness spoke of seeing a one-armed man at the scene. Mrs. Horner, while still recovering from her wounds, was taken to police headquarters and shown the suspects. She failed to identify any of them. Later, when shown their pictures individually, she identified all 6 of them. Neither Eldracher nor Mrs. Barclay would identify any of the 6 as among the men they saw near the scene of the crime. The car English had been driving illegally was a 2-door black Ford. The car alleged to have been used by the criminals was described as a 4-door green Plymouth. Robbery was assumed to be the motive for the murder, yet police found $1,642 in the dead man's pocket. 3 of the defendants claimed they had been given doped drinks and strange-tasting cigarettes, which made them black out before signing the confessions. Wilson, the only one who refused to sign, asserted that he was the only one who had steadfastly refused all offers of drinks and cigarettes during the questioning. All 6 offered witnesses and positive evidence to support their alibis, explaining their whereabouts, nowhere near the scene of the crime at the time of the murder. 3 of the 6 were at work. Mrs. Horner identified Forrest as a man who had visited her store previously and signed a receipt with another name. Forrest is illiterate. There is no record of his signature as anything but X. After an 8-week trial, the jury weighed the evidence and on August 6th brought back its verdict: guilty. The jury decision, reported the Trenton Times, seemed to have stunned the entire city. The Trenton Times was unduly moderate in its speculation. The jury's conviction of the Trenton Six rocked the entire world. 11 months later, the Supreme Court of New Jersey reversed the lower court decision on 3 technical counts and ordered a new trial for the Trenton Six. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People had filed a brief as friend of the court in the appeal. In March 1951, following a month's postponement caused by the illness of the prosecutor, 3 long years after these 6 defendants were arrested for a crime in which there is no evidence to indicate they played any part, the 6 are on trial for their lives for a second time. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People hopes that the beginning of this new trial is the beginning of the last chapter of the unbelievable story of the Trenton Six. The NAACP, which is defending Mackenzie and Wilson, hopes that the last chapter will have none of the grim overtones of the previous ones, and that the whole terrible tragedy of the Trenton Six will end on a bright note of hope for New Jersey, for America, and for the world, the acquittal of the defendants. Your support is desperately needed for the legal defense of these victims of miscarried justice. The New Jersey State Conference of NAACP branches, together with the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund Incorporated, must raise $10,000 to cover legal expenses involved in the trial. Every cent raised in the name of the NAACP for this purpose will be placed in a separate bank account for the New Jersey State Conference for the sole purpose of the legal defense of the men represented by the association. A careful accounting will be given to the public. The NAACP will not, as have other organizations previously handling the case, propagandize on the Trenton Six to raise money for other unconnected purposes. Do what you can today to bring about justice in the notorious case of the Trenton Six. Help the NAACP win the battle against the duplication of a Scottsboro or a Groveland in New Jersey. Click the coupon below and send in your contribution today. Oh. I'm going to see if there's other things we can look at that are slightly less heavy. I think those are very interesting as far as items go, and the history that they convey is very important. But I'd like to read about something else than crime for a moment. How about music? Music seems like a good choice. And I see Alice has dropped the link in chat again. If you want to take a look at the finding aid for this collection, there is a listing there of the folders that are in it. I have the first 6 boxes here with me, and I can pull out anything from any folder in the first 6 boxes and share it on stream if you are interested in seeing it. So we've got the entire contents of the folder known as music here. I'm going to zoom out. The first item in here is Negro Spirituals, arranged for solo voice by H.T. Burleigh. And there's a listing of the songs. This was 50 cents net as the cost. It looks like this is from 1917. At least the introduction written here is noted as New York 1917. Switch that up and it's down here. The plantation songs known as spirituals are the spontaneous outbursts of intense religious fervor, and had their origin chiefly in camp meetings, revivals, and other religious exercises. They were never composed, but sprang into life, ready-made from the white heat of religious fervor during some protracted meeting in camp or church, as the simple ecstatic utterance of wholly untutored minds, and are practically the only music in America which meets the scientific definition of folk song. So this is the opinion or interpretation of H.T. Burleigh in introducing these songs. Success in singing these folk songs is primarily dependent upon deep spiritual feeling. The voice is not nearly so important as the spirit, and then rhythm, for the Negro's soul is linked with rhythm, and it is an essential characteristic of most of the folk songs. It is a serious misconception of their meaning and value to treat them as minstrel songs, or to try and make them funny by a too literal attempt to imitate the manner of the Negro in singing them by swaying the body, clapping the hands, or striving to make the peculiar inflections of voice that are natural with colored people. Their worth is weakened unless they are done impressively, for through all these songs there breathes a hope, a faith in the ultimate justice and brotherhood of man. The cadences of sorrow invariably turn to joy, and the message is ever manifest that eventually deliverance from all that hinders and oppresses the soul will come, and every man will be free. And so that was H.T. Burleigh in 1917 writing that introduction to this book of music. Again, I will note for viewers that these are historic documents and they reflect the language and attitudes of the time at which they were written. And I merely present them here for educational purposes. So the language used is certainly not language that we would use in common parlance today. The songs that are included in here, Ain't Gonna Study War No More in 2 keys, Balm in Gilead in 2 keys, By and By, Couldn't Hear Nobody Pray, The Gospel Train, Deep River, Didn't My Lord Deliver Daniel, Don't You Weep When I'm Gone, Every Single Time I Feel the Spirit, Give Me Jesus, Go Down in the Lonesome Valley, Go Down Moses, Hard Trials, Hear the Lambs a-Cryin', Heaven, Heaven, He's Just the Same Today, I Don't Feel No Ways Tired, I Know the Lord's Laid His Hands on Me, I Got a Home in a Dat Rock, I Want to Be Ready, I Stood on the River of Jordan? Oh, you really shouldn't try and write things that way. Let's look at some of the sheet music. I'm not going to sing any of it, but Heaven, Heaven, Joyfully but Not Fast, Negro Spiritual, arranged by H.T. Burleigh, according to the authorship on there. Copyright MCMXXI, which should be 1921? Yeah, 1921. So the introduction was written in 1917. The music copyright is 1921. It looks like this is just the one song. And so I guess the other songs are ones that are available in the series, but this is just Heaven, Heaven. The next one that we have here is Melindy Lou, a banjo song with piano accompaniment by Lily Strickland, 50 cents, from G. Schirmer Incorporated in New York. Copyright 1920, which you can see down here. Published also as part song for men's voices, octavo number 6990, 15 cents for mixed. Honey, did you hear that? I'm not going to say it the way they have it written. Honey, did you hear that mockingbird sing last night? Oh Lord, he was singing so sweet in the moonlight. In the old magnolia tree, busting his heart wide melody. I know he was singing of you, Melindy Lou, Lindy Lou. Oh Lord, I lay right down and die. If I could sing like that bird sings to you, Melindy Lou. And just like the other one, they've written the words out in a way that is meant to evoke the accent that they imagine black people would use, which is not uncommon. I mean, this was 1920 and 1921 that we were looking at these. And most of us will likely have encountered at some point in education, at least if you were in the United States, books that use words written in an incorrect way, like they're spelled differently to evoke a specific jargon or a specific accent. So you see here on the second line, Hear That Mockingbird is spelled H-E-A-H-D-A-T. And then mockingbird, they just take out the G and replace it with an apostrophe. But it's an attempt at writing dialect, which still happens today, but also can be very problematic. I just roll along having my ups and downs. So this is Irving Berlin Incorporated. Copyright 1927. I don't know anything about this song, and it also doesn't seem to be a spiritual. It's just music, and it was included in this collection for some reason. But I'm not that interested in that one, so I'm going to move on. Here we have Tip Top Entertainment and Minstrel album. Minstrel shows very problematic in the history of the American theater. This is copyright 1936. For home entertainment, professional and amateur shows, 30 songs complete with words and music together with jokes and stories. Songs and stories made famous by the outstanding radio and record artists. So it lists the contents of jokes and songs. Doesn't list who the original artists were that would have been the ones making them famous, which I think is very interesting, considering I feel like that would have been one of the selling points. And then there's the jokes as well as the songs. I'm not going to read the jokes because I have not pre-read things, and I've already read enough things today out loud without having pre-read them that I'm scared of what I will come across in jokes from the 1930s. The Dixieland, New Orleans, Folio number 3, by the Morris Mayfair Melrose series of famous blues, stomps, and ragtime, edited by George Hoefer. So we've got a variety of songs here. This is copyright 1950. There's an introduction to the Dixieland style on the inside cover, and then the songs are Angry, Casa Loma Stomp, Dippermouth Blues, Easy Rider, Floatin' Down to Cottontown, High Society, I Ain't Got Nobody, Snag It, Sobbin' Blues, Sugar Babe, Sugarfoot Stomp, Walkin' the Dog, Weary Blues, and Why Don't You Do Right. So some of those should hopefully be familiar to some of you. I know I Ain't Got Nobody, Walkin' the Dog, and Why Don't You Do Right are immediately recognizable to me. So Why Don't You Do Right on page 16, I recognize because of the film Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But yeah, Why Don't You Do Right Like Some Other Men Do? So yeah, I definitely recognize that song from its use in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But I Ain't Got Nobody is a very famous song. Walkin' the Dog, I believe, is instrumental, and I'm not familiar with vocals in it. Apparently it does have vocals. Interesting. I would love to sing some of them for you, but Twitch tends not to like music these days, so I will not be doing so. Also, I've been talking for a while and not confident that I could sing them right now. Stephen Collins Foster Memorial of the University of Pittsburgh. I'm uncertain why this is in the music folder. Apparently because Stephen Collins Foster was a composer. So this is 1930, dedicated June 2nd, 1937, University of Pittsburgh, but the publication date appears to be 1939. So this appears to be an informational brochure about the memorial at the University of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's tribute to her gifted son, Stephen Collins Foster, has been completed, A structure of stone and steel has been erected and dedicated to the memory of the modest, unassuming composer who wrote songs which have become the heritage not only of his native America, but of the world. Who has not heard and loved Stephen's Old Folks at Home, My Old Kentucky Home, Masses into Cold Ground, and Old Black Joe? Who cannot sing them? His plantation melodies were intended to portray one race of people, one section of our country, one period in our history, yet through his genius he succeeded in creating songs which have leaped the boundaries of space and time and express universal thoughts and emotions. The best of his sentimental ballads are still sung today. His hauntingly beautiful Jeannie with the light brown hair, his tender Come Where My Love Lies Dreaming, and Beautiful Dreamer recall the charm of an age which is past. Oh, Susanna and Camptown Races are evidence that Stephen possessed a sense of humor and occasionally sang in lighter vein. Altogether, he produced more than 200 original songs and compositions. When he wrote his finest works, he so combined the qualities of poetry, melody, simplicity, and sincerity that the resulting songs form a remarkable contribution to the music of our nation and of all mankind. So, composer, and just information about the memorial at the University of Pittsburgh. That's everything that was in the music folder. We have a little bit more time. I will pull out another folder unless somebody wants to throw out a suggestion for one that they would like to see. I might get a little more selective in which ones I pull, just to see if there's anything specific I want to show off and make sure I have time for. There are some heavy topics in the first 6 folders. Propaganda, African Revolution, Beau-Cocoa. That one sounds interesting. News. And while I look through and pick out some things, I do want to again say thank you for everybody that is hanging out with us today. Whether you participate in chat or are just here to listen or watch, we really appreciate you stopping by. This is a show that I do every Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where I pull something from our special collections and university archives and show it off. And most of the time, I am not familiar with the contents of what I have pulled. I pull the collection and we look at it together. So the first time that you're seeing it is the first time that I'm seeing it. I do welcome comments from viewers if you are watching and you have some commentary that you want to make on the items that I'm sharing. I'm happy to entertain those comments and discuss the item. I'm also happy to expand upon archival process or anything about how we've preserved something. I'm happy to try and answer any questions about archives in general. I'm also happy to just sit here and look at items on camera and kind of talk about them and read out interesting portions of them while people watch. So don't feel that you have to join in chat, but you are welcome to do so if you so wish. I think for now I'm just going to pull these 2 folders and we'll look at them. Again, if there's anything in the first 6 boxes that you're interested in seeing, let me know. If there's anything in any of the other 12 boxes, I believe there are 18 boxes total, that you want to see, you can also throw that in chat and I can bring it back later in the month. But for now, I only have the 6 boxes in the room here with me. Oh, okay, the memorial that was about, Alice is saying it was removed in 2018 because of the nature of Foster's music. That is a good update. I was not aware of that. So here we have a, a brochure or pamphlet called Beau-Cocoa. The try/by unquarterly of the Beauty Force, Volume 4, Number 1, dated 1971. On the cover here we have DC on April 24, 1971, with the word peace and a large crowd of people. And Albany, April 27, 1971, saying employment, and again, a large crowd of people. On the back cover, we have a picture of a woman in, it looks like a mage's hat and cape, possibly. I think that's what it's meant to be. The sign says astrology. And the caption at the bottom of the photo reads, "Little Sis and System of Enlargement of Psychic Lodgings in a Large Envelope. And the Ninth Wonder, 9th Reach Out and Have the Ninth Wonder No More. Find out. From your star with the Invent Eons, Surpassion of Leah's Soul Sister. June, Rogers, Mrs. 9th/9th. That is literally what the caption says. The caption does not make a lot of sense to me, so I'm curious to see what we're going to find in Beau-Cocoa. Beau-Cocoa. Oya, joy, they say, and hello from the board. Editor, publisher, Lloyd Addison. Ed A/L. Not sure what that would mean. Justice Taylor. Manager, promotions and distribution, Richard Taylor. They start with an ellipsis at the beginning of the sentence, followed by an ampersand. So, and the array, as if it's continuing from something, but there was nothing for it to continue from. So I'm confused by that. And the array of other talent and excuses about the prod, you duck and shun, and all that. We are happy, some the less, that this is our second number of the year getting out. Though the last number was something of a split, 1970-1 Infinity, Volume 3, Number 3, it was decided unanimously that this would be our free all number. And herein are some of the labors of a group of writers quite inclusive and who smiled upon B-C and joined our free all. Isaac J. Black, Kent Chamberlain, E. Gordon Dalby, Jr., Don I. Frankel, Addison H. Halleck, Robin Jenkins, Thomas Lamance, Earl Nurmi, Harvey M. Plotnick, Lyle Walter, and, sorry, momentarily misplaced, Jean Newkirk Smith. I think this is supposed to read as though it's a radio broadcast that you turned on in the middle, which is very interesting to me. Stylistically, it makes it somewhat difficult to read because I was not expecting that. Now that I have that interpretation, maybe it will be a little easier. In passing, it should be noted that receipt of a poem quite often creates a dilemma, some small part of which contributes to free all, but only a small part. Accordingly, writers should take under advisement the prospect of convincing the fickle, incompetent, vacillating editors that you mean talent business by submitting at least 2 or more of your works, largely relevant to short poems and such only, even if you don't think the particular market caters to 1 or more of the items. This gives the editors a chance to reject something without, maybe, passing completely over a William Blake or Shaka Spear Zulu. Advised. Now, what does free all mean? Someone suggested a liberation theme. Someone else, beauty, forced, free love. All I know for sure is not it, not it, not it. Who is going to be it? Not it, not it, not it. One of you has got to be it. Not it, not it, not it. Well, let's do the 2-finger split. 1, 2, 3, knit. 1, 2, 3, wit. 1, 2, 3, it. I'm it. I quit. If there's a final feeling to the venture, we hope you like it. This is very 1970s. Rightly so. It's from 1971, but it's out there. And it achieves its purpose because it is definitely intended to be out there. Looks like there is a poem here at the beginning. Ooh, it is a lengthy poem. We'll give it a go. Why not? Let's see. I'm going to read this looking at the camera, so I'm going to switch views real quick and give you my face while I read some poetry for you. Heritage. His black self righteously was dying, lay dying and God's dying. Black roots shriveled, dying and dead. Love's dead and loved ones dying, and his black self sought, laying God's people folk. Love's loved ones. Fast passions burnt, cut loose ends, and knot grass virgins and white mummies. And his black, self-determined, dyed black and peeled off dryly drying, that just before death would come yew logs, loading up his fire going out, with brown and black and white pie-faced log ghosts cinnamon rolls. And his black self soul searchlighted, would kindle new logs of fine timber, experiencing vivacious timber rinds and some fine blacks of jet-matched tone, mellow yellows and synthetics, cosmetic frenetic grains, love knots, and sinewy screwies with defenses. But his black self was mud puddles bred, and among watersheded forest trees corrosions sat in his laps and dug him uprooted. And his black self would not revitalize. His eyes were on the apple pies, peach cobbler lemon meringues, roundly of fatly integrated middle where as fluffy puffy. Would not revert, overt of belly bulge, wearing ball-bearing grooves. He went oink oink, boring, exciting whiting, and several times getting off his black self dying. And his black self was dying, rust-proof over dust of lint flint rubs, growing on to get real to be lacquer. But lust long on day's administration, so long of day to goodbye health in nightfall, resurrection was a rusty spring and red corpuscles impinged upon by fluorescence. Pimped life was squeeze infected, and a too close kinky shave of the pubicity commercially telethoned the psychosocial sore. Don't pick at my itchy white head, yow, you've popped me off and shut me up under red flesh tape. But I'm gonna grow somewhere else and become cauterized by words, sweet lotions, they said. He who had made application for a master's decreed self-decontrolled diffidence for words robust matrix health ill fate the less. And for philosophical humbugaboo as overlookout for the denied death. We knew, renewed, being defied, undone, did not properly pass. On-off black woman aesthetics had be completely kinetical expelled. On-off brown woman aesthetics asked how now to be placed cosmetics knell. On-off yellow woman aesthetics failed of course by copyright competingly excelled. On-off white woman aesthetics flip-flunked hysteria 69-inch times out of meld. And his black social self observed the dark key estimate to kingdom became appalled bearing enlightenment. And there was there, meaning since light break before the nightfall he asked, that he may have aforesaid, open quote, let in case history changes, there be brotherhood forecastings in irony, so life in epistememorialized happy ever after, once upon a cross-section therefore tried, is little to gamble on, one light time for what's more life to come. But his black self was dying, self-consciously unconscionable, was dying of color-collared, green, guilt-ridden hoe-rowers, fired by happiness fiat, were milk toasts and handmade frustrate, by lust's deconstruct spare ribbing, and fate's fat tail lies, requiring steady serviciousness. His black self-having clocks set and backed out against a general strike-off labor light saving time was to break tie upstart scoffers, white and horny blowers in original insincerities, and scrape in barrels of syrup and syrupy ash candy leftovers. But his black self caught the scurvy downcastings of many and disappearing black selves mixed fixed, that they could afford not, and cupped to butter, slip-knot, naked necktie sales of hangings about town, housekeeping tips, and cafe clawing lights with pin-up partners and no more thank you Jesuses. Said and more gilt-edged to cut, another revolutionary dead from white puffy-loving BB water gunning. Where has his black self come from, that coming forms this, get off, disgracefully definitive, genocide, and don't come black? Nowhere as ergo forgiven as to be black right on all night idea eelies, outrun out of their temporized undeeds. And whereas found foregone to do/be, gettin' right on showpiece de resistance, in the war put on warped puffy huffing. Thus lust, his feuding black-white, self-appetite, carnal-eyed, dye-washed, ash-passioned, madding, was her itch staged in a paragon shoot outfit with the enemy son of a BB gun. He went, pig rat-a-tat, all my love at chew, rat-a-tat, at chew, squeezing the bulls let out, ha ha ha, at chew too, pig rat-a-tat, pig rat. And everybody died whitely, in the self-preserving war hoop-de-doo bee. But his black self came bacterically to afterlife, to anti-spectator tape parade down Pennsylvania Avenue in pimples and dimples of his death. And God-Dog came out of his White House, saying, bow wow down to me and cease this pain in the neck bone up protesting. But Pow Wow Land became Rally Alley until Law and Order alibi passed, an anti-bodied congressional act. And all the young black angels cakewalked to Charlie horse cowboy and Indian peace pipelines, caught the measly sweet lotions bottled up in civil licensed obedience from their Molotov cocktail bust and close aftershave cramps, where Christopher colonized and He-Man be Jesus to become again a boy. And now that his black self had died forever, had buried the Afro-Zen comb and brush, the super techno for answer blades, he missioned airily around the acne-deepened souls, palm singing in the Armageddon its song, until his resurrection got Humpty hot Sunnyside Blackburn. And then the day after, the lonely home-stretched pale, foreskin flint of the satyr's day, he roared up and said to the first high-toned G-stringy blonde harpy, minus 100 millimeters long ago, I could stone have dug you, birdmouth, but now that I'm Christopher Caponed, how about a funky Plymouth rock and roll bird bath? BB Itch. Credited to LEA. So that was, I'm not sure stylistically if it meets the definition of beatnik poetry, but it definitely has the feel of some of, like, I mean, this is 1971, and it came across as very much 1971 poetry. So, yeah, this entire book appears to be poetry of similar style. So yeah, that was Beau-Cocoa. I pulled it initially just because the name brought to mind to me the artistic style of Rococo. And I feel like that's probably intentional. But anyway, we are at the end of time for our stream today. We have been looking through items in the Black History Pamphlet collection here at Special Collections and University Archives in Newman Library at the Virginia Tech University Libraries. This is the Virginia Tech University Libraries Twitch channel. If you have been watching and you are interested in more archival explorations like this one, I'm here every Wednesday from 2:30 to 4:30 and pull items out of our archival collections to share them on screen. We also have a role-playing game show called The Role of Play that happens every 2 weeks, where we do one-shot tabletop role-playing game sessions based on works of literature. The most recent one was last Friday, and it was The Open Boat, I believe was the work of literature. The next one will be next week on Friday, when we will be doing a one-shot that is based on Through the Looking Glass. It is a follow-up to our very first one-shot, which was based on Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So check out the channel, give a follow if you're interested in our content. We would love to see you back for additional streams. We are also open for people to come if you're in the Blacksburg area near the campus of Virginia Tech. You can always stop by Special Collections to see items that I'm sharing here for yourself. We are, at the moment, because of COVID-19, we are only open by appointment only, but you can visit our website at spec.lib.vt.edu. I'll throw that in chat there. To find out how to set up an appointment or to learn more about Special Collections here at Virginia Tech. We would love to have you stop by and actually look at some of these materials in person for yourself if you're ever in the area. But otherwise, you're welcome to join me here on Twitch, where we can look at them together. I'm going to see who we want to throw a raid to. And just want to see, because we do like to send off to other people. I think what we're going to do today is we're going to raid the North Carolina State University Libraries. They are currently streaming a music show. So I hope that you will join us for that raid over to the North Carolina NCSU Libraries and their channel. But that is going to be it. Oh, they may not let me raid. So let me try one more time. That is not allowing me to raid. Well, we will raid over to another library that is playing video games. So it is a public library. I cannot recall exactly where they are located. Give me 1 second and I will see who they are. You know, I don't remember. I know I found them. I know they're a library. I know they're a public library. But we will raid over to them. They're playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. You know, raiding is not apparently working right now. I will give one more try. Yep. Yeah, it appears that Twitch raids are offline, so I will just end the stream and say I hope that you come back again in the future. I would love it if you all would do a NCSU libraries, an old-fashioned raid and head on over to NCSU. If I can spell. Head on over to NCSU Libraries and say hello from us. Tell them that we sent you. I would love for you to do that because we would love to share our audience with them. But otherwise, that is going to be the end of my stream for today. I hope to see you again next week, and have a great day.